then click over.
Well, if I decide to speak, can I say this is Jeff?
So
That's going to make things real confusing, Tim.
Only if it's a good comment.
That's what I always tell people that when I call them on the phone. I go, this is Jeff Nine. I want to think I'm smart. My credibility goes up.
Brian, we ready to go?
Tell him, yeah.
He's on mute. Oh, there he goes.
Okay, Chair, we're ready to go. I'm going to click record now.
All right.
Okay, we are now recording.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the regular meeting of the Vineyard Planning Commission. The time is 6:01 on Wednesday, November 4th, 2020, and I will be calling this meeting to order. The first item of business that I'd like to take care of is reading a written determination to allow this to be an electronic meeting. So just bear with me while I read this verbatim. It's also in the agenda for anyone, members of the public joining us here. I, Anthony Jenkins, as the chair of the Vineyard Planning Commission, do hereby find and declare as follows. 1, due to the emergency conditions which currently exist in the state of Utah, and specifically in Utah County and Vineyard City as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent surge in COVID-19 infections across the state and in Utah County, the holding of public meetings with an anchor location as defined in the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. And 2, the risk to those who may be present at an anchor location can be substantially mitigated by holding public meetings of the Planning Commission pursuant to electronic means that allow for public participation via virtual means. And 3, the city has the means and ability to allow virtual participation in the public meetings in accordance with the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. Now, therefore, based upon the foregoing, for 30 days from the date of this order, meetings of the Vineyard Planning Commission shall be conducted by virtual means without an anchor location. All right, Morgan, anything else that I need to add there?
No, you did perfect. So what we'll do is if we still have a spike, then we'll consult with you, Chair, and in 30 days. And if we need to, then we'll redo the order. So you'd have to. And Anthony actually signs a paper. It's in the staff report. You've probably seen it. It's right behind the agenda. So, but that's required by state code to do electronic meetings. And so we're just trying to stay kind of legal within that realm and, and do our part with the virus.
Great. Thanks, Morgan. And as he mentioned, so the November meetings are taken care of electronically now, and hopefully things get under control sooner rather than later and we can get back in person. But as long as there's unnecessary risk, we'll send these electronically. All right. So with that, we've begun our meeting. I didn't ask someone ahead of time, so we'll forego number 2 and jump into number 3, the open session. I'm looking online right now, and Morgan, I'll ask your help as well. This is the time for any citizens or members of the public to share anything in this open session that's not covered on the agenda. And if you've got something, please raise your hand using Zoom or type in the chat window and we'll call on you.
I saw a couple of people just jump on. So the chair has just opened public comment. So if you have a comment on something not on the agenda, please use your raise hand button and we will let you speak. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, me neither. All right, we'll move off of the open session and into minutes for review and approval. I'll ask the Planning Commission to take a look at the October 21st, 2020 meeting minutes. And if you've got some discussion, we can do that now. If not, I'll look for a motion to have those minutes approved.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 21st.
Okay, thanks. That was Shan with the motion.
Oh, sorry. This is
You're
Shan.
good. Do I have a second?
This is Tim. I second it.
All right, thanks, Tim. And we'll go roll call with everything to make this easier. Anthony, aye. Jeff?
Aye.
Shan?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Bryce?
Aye.
Great. All right, we'll move on. There are no business items today, but there are 2 public hearings. So we'll move on to item 6.1. This is a zoning text amendment public hearing for parking regulations. And I'll turn it over to staff to present and get us started there.
Great, thank you. I will go ahead and share my screen. So please let me know if you're able to see this screen.
Yes.
Good, okay, thank you. This ordinance, so 2015 is an ordinance that takes into account one of the big issues that we've dealt with through our code enforcement, and that is coverage of front yards for parking, and also as a provision for parking studies. So what I'll do is first I'll talk about the parking study portion of that. I believe Scott Peary may be on, but we do have an applicant, and so I talked to him earlier today, so he was going to jump on. Hopefully he gets on. But I see Amber. I think here I'm going to mute you, Amber. Just we get some background noise. So I'll go ahead and just jump right into it. But as we discussed in our last meeting, in our zoning code, under the parking ordinance, we have categorical uses that cover several smaller subset uses. And one of those specifically is in regards to recreational uses. And as we analyze that, one of the kind of the directions from the Planning Commission was to look at other uses. Are there other categorical uses that fall basically into needing a parking study? And so where we like the parking study is that it provides the ability for the Planning Commission to look specifically at an individual site. And then depending on the site and the unique requirements of a development, to look at reducing the number of parking required per thousand. And that's, that's the number that's listed in the parking table. It says, 5 parking stalls per 1,000 square feet of office. And so this provides the Planning Commission the authority to do that. So they would have to come to the Planning Commission. I know we talked about allowing it to be done on an administrative level. We kind of felt like just on a staff level that it would be better to allow the Planning Commission to have that discretion instead of a staff level. It kind of heightens the level of review and analysis and puts the applicant in a position where they need to justify their claim. And so how it's written is that Planning Commission may use the parking study as a basis for reducing the amount of on-site parking required for specific uses defined under the following non-residential categories listed in the table 1538.030 2C. Eating and drinking establishments, so that takes into account all the restaurants, entertainment and recreational uses, and medical uses. The reason why I limited it to those 3, those seem to be the most prevalent within our code that had the most amount of subset uses. And, you could get anything from a surgical center to a plasma donation center. I mean, there's so many uses that fall under the medical category. Likewise with entertainment, it's anything from a stadium use, which is kind of weird because that would also fall under an assembly use, to indoor pickleball that our applicant is proposing. And eating and drinking establishments, there is every kind of restaurant that you can think of that's out there. And so we really like this because it basically provides a study from a professional that has demonstrated experience conducting parking studies to do the analysis. And so anyway, what we would do, how the process would work is they would typically come in under a site plan. And so you would see it anyway because they have to get a site plan approval for the landscaping and the building layout. But they would also provide at that time a parking analysis if they so choose, to try and reduce their parking. And I don't anticipate it being something that we would use in every case, but where we do have a really specific use that is very unique to the city, like an indoor pickleball facility would be a good example. Allows us to be a little bit more thoughtful than applying just a blanket standard on top of it. Are there any questions regarding that portion of the ordinance?
Morgan, this is Anthony. So with this proposal here, we would see this at the site plan process. Those would go joint, hand in hand.
Yeah, or a building reuse. And so if, say you had a bank that moved out, and then you had a restaurant that tried to move in, every now and then you get some funky reuses of buildings like that. And we wouldn't approve that on a staff level. They came in and said, we have way less parking than other types of restaurants. We want to reduce that number. Here's a parking study. That parking study would go to you. And so most cases it would be a site plan, but as we get built out and years ahead, I would imagine as buildings get reused, you would see individual parking studies for reuse of buildings.
Got it. Any other questions from the commission for Morgan so far?
Yeah, I have just a couple. This is Tim. We've listed, Morgan, you've shown 3 different kinds of categories. Number one, are there other categories of uses that were not included? That would be one question. Then the second one in the reuses, if I were a business and I came in with a site plan petitioning a reduction of parking, and another business 5 years later comes in and wants to use the building, which requires more parking, does that put us in any kind of issue that we need to think about?
All uses, we do a zoning check at the business license stage. So before a business license gets approved, so in the case with the bank moves out, a restaurant wants to move in. That restaurant would apply for a business license. At that point, staff would do an analysis of parking. And if they didn't have enough parking on site, and they requested to do a reduction, then potentially they could do a parking study. It wouldn't necessarily be a site plan, but it would be a parking study that we would forward to the planning commission to review. I apologize. Let me see. I think someone's trying to get in to the meeting, so let me see if I can. No, I think I'm okay.
I was gonna add on that, Morgan. That's usually checked in the building permit application process.
Yeah, for TIs. So we would do it through that, and also for a business license. Sometimes a site doesn't need much done, and so it's one business coming in, another one moving right in. And from a building code standpoint, categorically, they already meet the building code as it was set up, even though it's a different type of use. And so, so they would do that through the building permit. You're absolutely right, through the TI. You've probably done a million of those. And or it would just be through a business license if it didn't trigger a building permit.
And then my other question, this is Tim, are there categories we're not considering? I know you've talked about 3 categories: food and drink, recreation, and I forgot the other one. But
those seem to be the most applicable to how our parking code is written right now. In the parking table, and I can run up through here. I think I gotta go this way. So under the parking table, you have the larger categorical uses. And a lot of those split things out pretty good. I mean, we could add retail, we could add some of the others, but we felt like that was kind of the best way to kind of wade into the parking study, was to take those 3 uses. And if someone wanted to do it for, a use that might, something that might fall under like a lodging use, then they could apply for an amendment and add that category here. So it doesn't prohibit a text amendment in the future, kind of like this applicant's going through, but at least it opens it up enough to take care of kind of the ones that we felt would be the most problematic.
thank you.
This is Shan. I think it's probably a really good addition to have it go through the planning commission, because I know that it will just add a little bit more detail and rigor through that process. So I think that this is a good addition. I just wanted to mention that.
Great, thank you.
All right, it doesn't sound like there's any other comments right now. Morgan, if you had anything else to cover on this.
Nope, that's it. And then
Okay.
I can jump to the other portion of this ordinance.
Yeah,
I know
would you
it's-
recommend doing that before we open the public hearing?
You know, because it's one ordinance, I'll do a quick presentation of the other section of this ordinance, and then I would recommend you open a public hearing for the full thing. And unless you want to break it out, it's up to you.
We'll follow your recommendation, and yeah, you can do the other portion, and then we'll open a full public hearing.
Yeah, no problem. And let me see, I'm checking to see if the applicant is on, and I'm not seeing the applicants.
Who is it that you're looking for, Morgan?
Scott Peary. I didn't see him on. But anyway, if he gets on, we can have him provide some comments. He actually did a parking study. He hired Ryan Hales Engineering, and he provided a parking study. You wouldn't review that now, but I thought it would be helpful if you had questions of how it would look. We could actually show you that, but you would most likely see it because he's applying for one in the site plan. So you'll see it anyway. Let me go back to the top of this. Okay, so the other portion of this has to deal with parking coverage. As you know, this has been an issue we have been working on for quite some time, and we discussed it pretty thoroughly in our last meeting. So what this does is essentially we have an issue where with how our lots are being built, the parking or the driveways are being expanded quite a bit, even through the building permit, especially with some of the old ones where we didn't actually do full calculations on the parking coverage. We do now. But a lot of the older homes, and I say older in Vineyard, like 4 years old. So a lot of the new but old to Vineyard homes do have some parking issues as far as more than the overall coverage. Okay, so Scott Peary just texted me, so I think he may be jumping on it. So what we decided to do was to look at this and look realistically at what the goal of the city is. And in talking with the planning commission and many of the residents, there's a real demand to have parking on site rather than parking in streets. And that seemed to be a pretty consistent theme, that people would rather, you're still going to get parking on the street, but they would rather have the majority of cars on site and leave the streets open for, people to ride bikes and just fire emergency access, and there's wider streets. It provides more room. So what this does is we have upped the parking max to 65%. I know we talked about 50% before, but there was a kind of a request in the planning commission that 50% might not be enough, and to look at possibly allowing the area from the internal edge of the garage all the way to the side property line to be paved. I really like that because what it does is it still provides some sort of a front yard. And so I think this graphic does a pretty good job. So what the code says basically is where your garage is, that internal line of the garage moving to the side property line adjacent to the garage, that this area is allowed to be paved. And so that would open it up quite a bit more than what it was before. But what it does do is it limits parking from that edge to the other opposite property line. We like that because it's going to kind of maintain a sense of a yard, a sense of a front yard, keep some green area. But it does provide kind of a definitive line. And then it helps the parking to be based more off of the architecture of the home, the design of the home, as opposed to just like the overall percentage. It does cap it though, regardless at 65%. We just felt in looking at some of the percentages that, once you I mean, my personal thing, I think 50% is gone a lot, but if we're going to go higher, 65, you know, it seems a little bit arbitrary, but 65 just seemed like a good number to hold people to. If you start going up above that, then at some point you might as well just pave the whole thing. You know, if you're not gonna have just a little like triangle of green space. But anyway, that's our proposal. We feel like that would help most of the homes to be compliant. It would help with the accessory dwelling unit requirements that we have, because we do require 5 spaces. So that is a city requirement. And in the current configuration, a lot of the houses would not be able to have an ADU because of the front yards or just configured in a way that doesn't work. Now, Chair, if you'll allow me, we do have Brad Gilson. He is the engineer for homesteads. So he's the one who does all the design work for, you know, all the land around the city. I think some of you may even live in homesteads. So Brad is he's the owner of Gilson Engineering. And I think he's analyzed the code and wanted to speak about it. And I think he may have a few examples that he wants to do a screen share with you, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah. If we've got him on, I'd love to hear that, and then we'll any members of the public that are on for the public hearing, we'll get to that very, very quickly.
Okay, Morgan, I can share. I'm ready to share.
Okay, you should be allowed.
I've got 2. Let's see. I want to share screen 2. Well, I can see my screen. I lost you guys though. Well,
Yeah, I can see Dakota 3 car.
Reset.
All right, so this shows, so one of the challenges that the owner, Glenn Pettit, has had through some of this development is that a lot of the people that buy these homes will go in later and add, can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Yes.
So he'll sell a 3-car model, will install a driveway here, and then later they come back and add this pad for an RV pad or for additional parking for, well, a number of reasons why they would do that. And currently, the way the ordinance is written, it prohibits us from doing that. And so what ends up happening, instead of Glenn doing that work, they come back in and do it themselves. And so there's a whole hodgepodge of different ways that they're constructed. And when this is not done, I guess one of the problems that we run up against is there's a lot of parking along the street, and this would help get some of those cars off the street and onto the property. In any event, so we've gone through and we've looked at all the models. A lot of these lots are of varying sizes, and if we base it off of the ordinance, there's so much square footage in the front yard, and a percentage of that is landscaping, and the other percentage would be hardscape. And based on the way the current ordinance reads, it prohibits us from being able to do that unless we've determined by looking at a whole mix of these different lot sizes that it's around 65 to 70%. And I think the way it's drafted right now, it says 65%. Is that kind of what you were looking for, Morgan? Explanatory like that?
Yeah, I wanted to, because I know you're the one who does all the site designs, and then you're the one that we've been dealing with especially after neighbors come in and pour pads. And so that's kind of frustration on your guys' end as well. But I think that's helpful. Brad has a couple exhibits. I don't know if you want to maybe click through a few of those just to show some other examples, but they're pretty consistent. This is what we've seen.
We tried to find some extreme examples in this case. Here's another one where we've got a side lot, which you've got a little bit more, since the property line's not right here, you got a little bit more landscaping, which helps us with our percentage a little bit. And, this particular one was one that was more extreme because it was a kind of narrows towards the front. And I guess the advantage of having it addressed at the ordinance level is it would allow Glenn to be the one, when he just pours this driveway, he would just pour all of it all at once, so it's all standardized, it all looks the same. And you don't have different shade of concrete or different type of concrete. There's just a lot of, anyway, if you look at the way I do work after the fact, it doesn't look as good as the original.
I think there's also a benefit to, if it's being done when the home is built, you're less likely to go over utility lines, those types of things. Whereas if someone does it ad hoc afterwards, they may not take that into consideration.
Anthony, this is Chris Wilson. One reason, yeah, exactly what you're saying. I would say up front, because the developer's already dealing with the utility companies, and the one big thing we have when these come in afterwards, and they do come through the permit process, one of the big issues we get all the time is utility boxes for the telecommunications, power, and stuff like that, that they're having issues doing the concrete around, or they want to go over them. And if they don't go through the process of putting a traffic rated box in, then they get ran over and crushed and stuff. So it does help if it's all done up front and with that coordination with the other utilities and such. So.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Brad, did you have anything else that you wanted to share here?
Really, same thing Chris said. I review this, Chris reviews it. Glenn, you have the building department that's out there inspecting it. Glenn's doing it the same way. There's a lot of good reasons why it would be better to have Glenn be doing this up front. And from a cost standpoint, typically he can do it, or should be able to be doing it for pretty competitive price for the homeowner, for the benefit of the homeowner, rather than having a third party later mobilize and do it as a special one on. Anyway, that's all.
Thanks.
All right. Morgan, did you have anything else before we shift into the public hearing?
No, yeah, you're good to do the public hearing. Thanks.
Okay. If the commission's open to it, could I get a motion to move into a public hearing now?
Yeah, this is Tim. I motion that we do move into public hearing.
Thanks, Tim. Do I have a second?
In a second. Okay, go ahead. Jeff's got it.
We got Jeff with the second, and we'll do roll call again. Anthony, aye. Tim,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Shan,
Aye.
and Bryce.
Aye.
All right, we are now in a public hearing specifically for the parking that we've just talked about now. This is the opportunity and the only opportunity for this topic for members of the public to speak on this. So we'll give just
Then, Brad,
a bit of time here.
if you could do a stop screen share on yours.
Got it.
And we have a Bryson Murray who has raised his hand. So
Okay.
So sorry, this is Ashley Murray, the wife. But
Okay, great.
So I just wanted to give our public one thanks for thinking about the extra cement on the private properties. We are residents of Vineyard of 5 years, and the one thing we didn't like about our house is we had no way to think about our RV, to be able to push it back into the backyard over any type of grass or anything like that it wasn't possible. When looking at building again, we're actually building with Home Center again. Without that cement, that becomes very hard, as well as we have a AUD unit, auxiliary unit, that parking is not possible really without that cement. And so we are just very for it at one, and thank you for thinking about the residents in this particular notion.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. All right, I'm looking here. I don't see any other hands raised. Morgan, are you seeing anything else?
I'm not. We do have, it looks like Jason or Scott Peary has jumped on. And so I know he has prepared a traffic report. So this is the same ordinance that covers the parking study. So just so you know, Scott or Jason, we reviewed that portion of the ordinance change. And if it's all right, Anthony, we'd love to, it might be good to hear from him and kind of, let the applicant speak.
Yeah. If one of the peers wants to speak to that, we'll keep the public hearing open because I'd like any members of the public to be able to address this after they hear that, and then we'll move to close. So go ahead, Jason or Scott. You may need to unmute if you're ready to present.
See, they're texting me. Maybe just give them a minute.
Okay. While we're waiting, again, we are in public hearing for the parking. So if there's any additional comments, Ashley was able to speak up, but any other members of the public that had anything to share, go ahead. Okay, doesn't look like there are any. Morgan?
Yeah, he's not responding. So
Okay.
if you don't have any questions for him, he'll have to go to the city council as well. And so, but anyway, yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, and as far as hearing a specific parking study, that's definitely something we can dive into when it gets further down the road too. But I think the understanding that the proposed regulations would include a parking study to reduce the parking. I think that's the key takeaway there. All right, seeing that there are no other comments from members of the public, do I have a motion to close our public hearing from a member of the Planning Commission?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, thanks. That was Bryce. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Shan.
Shan with the second, and we'll do a roll call. Anthony, aye. Bryce?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Shan?
Aye.
All right. Public hearing is now closed. And now is our time to deliberate on this ordinance and see if we want to recommend as is or make any adjustments. So, Commission, any further discussion to take place on this?
This is Tim. I just want to ask a question or raise an issue. And I totally agree that it would be cost effective to do these pads when they're being built and so on. But I'm wondering if we're going to use them for RV parking, boat parking, utility trailer parking, all those kinds of things, it seems like we have a code which requires them to be shielded. And I'm just wondering how that consideration will be made if it's simply an enlarged parking pad. Because I would just hate for us to change our community where that's all we see driving up and down the street are utility trailers, boats, and all that kind of thing.
Right now, our code does require, so this doesn't change that portion of the code. They are required to park boats, camping trailers, RVs in a side or rear yard on a pad, and it has to be screened by a 6-foot fence. That's a code that's been in since the very first zoning code, I think in 2009, whatever that very first one was adopted, and that's carried through. So they could basically create an approach to the side yard, but if they parked an RV, camping trailer, or boat back there, they would have to put, it could be a slider fence, but they would have to put a 6-foot screen, between them and the public. I mean, you would still see the top of it, but it would still, the idea is that you have a kind of a consistent frontage, and then, that the toys are kind of in the back.
Well,
so that code's still in place.
Okay, and this is Tim, and I appreciate that, and I'd like us to really adhere to that if we are in fact going to build out more parking space on the sides of homes, that must all be screened.
Yeah, so we enforce it. We do a complaint basis. So when people do complain, or if we notice an RV parked over a sidewalk because that's a public safety issue, then we'll address it that way. And if it's in a street sticking out and blocking travel lanes, we can address it that way as well. We don't have a full-time code enforcement, so we haven't been as proactive, but we do the kind of public safety things. And then if someone complains, then we can go out and enforce it that way. We're required to. But I agree. you know, this doesn't change that part of the code. That code would still be in place.
And so as these pads are being built, the screening would be built at the same time?
Well, if they're just parking a car, you don't have to screen a car.
I understand.
And so, yeah, so they wouldn't be required to do that. Now, we don't require a fence permit. So if they did park an RV, they would have to, on their own, they would have to put a fence in. If they didn't and received a complaint, then we would send them a letter, and then they would be required to put up screening.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for the questions there. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Yeah, this is Jeff. So Morgan, does the 65% based on those exhibits that that Brad was showing on those site plans, does the 65% is that part of the goal? That issue that those developers are having and homeowners are having, the 65% would resolve that issue?
Yeah, from talking with Brad, I don't know if Brad, you want to speak to that? It seems like, well,
Yes, that's correct. We looked hard trying to find, okay, what is that number? And I am worried that at some point, maybe we'll have a lot that comes up that maybe we wish that number was a little different, but we tried to look at all the worst case scenarios, and I think that 65% would cover us.
Okay.
Morgan, a question that I heard just from speaking with neighbors is, what about the existing non-conforming? I mean, there could be some lots that were, didn't go through this process, but may fall in now. Would they be adopted in, or if there was a complaint, how would those be handled? I think there's some question around that.
yeah, so this would apply to all the properties in the city for single family homes. And so they would be, really probably 50 to 60% of them are not in compliance right now. And so this would make the majority of them in compliance. If they're still over the 65%, then they still are not in compliance. I mean, so it's kind of from a zoning standpoint, I guess the fact that a city doesn't proactively go out and enforce a specific regulation doesn't mean that someone gets grandfathered in. So if someone's over the 65%, then they're still not in conformance. And if anything, we've made our ordinance more open and like easier to follow. So it's not like we tightened it up and we made nonconformities. We made it less tight and we've made less nonconformities. So if they're over the 65%, they would still be in violation of the code. And I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think that answers most of it. The other question, there are some people in my neighborhood, it's a smaller lot neighborhood, that are concerned that where they have 3-car garages, they feel like they're probably over the 65%, and it's been that way for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because they have a 3-car driveway. They haven't added any concrete at all, but it's a very small lot and likely over 65%. And they're wondering, are they going to have to tear that out? What's that's the concern that they have here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know if we do receive a complaint. Our policy is that we do have to follow through on it.
Even if it was built that way and permitted from the beginning?
Well, if it was okay, I think I understand your question better now. I apologize. So if something was approved through a building permit, because our building permits have all the construction, the engineering, and then it also has a site plan. And so if the site plan of the building permit was approved in error, and we do have those, and the city approved a 75% coverage and didn't check it, then in my opinion, and we'd have to talk to the attorney, but in my opinion, they would be vested under their approved site plan. Because you can't go back retroactively, and you might be able to, but it would be pretty tough. Once you stamp approval on something, that gives a property owner property rights, regardless of if it's in compliance with the code or not. If we didn't check that, then that's on us.
Yeah, and I'm sharing my screen here. So here's an example. This third house is in my neighborhood. They're 10th acre lots, and you can see that all of this was put in by the builder. It's a 3-car garage,
Yeah.
and that's the front yard right there. And there's maybe 3 feet down the side there. So certainly over 50%, probably
may
over
be
65.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could be at 70. I mean, they might be actually right at it. But if we approved a site plan that we have on file that shows that driveway approved like that, then the city's not going to go back.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to check. Obviously, being in this neighborhood that has an issue like that, I wanted to make sure we weren't creating a terrible situation for people that moved in 5 years ago that bought it straight from the builder that way.
Sure.
Okay.
But to clarify though, if they added it afterwards and there's nothing from the city that approved it, then technically the city could. And I don't know if we're gonna
And there are some, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but if we receive a complaint, then we do have to expend our resources that way. We have to address citizen concerns as they come up.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the commission?
I can make a motion.
Yeah, if you're comfortable, go ahead and make a motion. Just because Bryce is comfortable making a motion, if anyone else has a counter motion they would like to make, that's fine too. But go ahead, Bryce.
All right. So first off, I just want to make a comment that I like the way that it's written. I think that it's good that it's on the side of the garage. It kind of makes it so that we keep what we want. But I make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the proposed zoning ordinance 2020-15.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Shan.
Shan with the second, and we'll go roll call. Anthony, aye. Jeff?
Aye.
Bryce?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Shan.
Aye.
All right. So that will move forward as a recommended approval to the commission. For any members of the public, you'd be welcome to join that as well with the city council. In fact, we'd encourage you to so that your voice can be heard there as well. All right, we will move along now to the next public hearing item. Morgan, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Chair. Let me get this pulled up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, are you able to see this 2020-16?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is the other half of those amendments that we discussed in our last meeting. Specifically, it deals with accessory structures. And I know this is one Bryce has been excited about. I think we were supposed to work on it about 2 years ago and we never did. So I'm sorry, buddy. But I know that this is one that's important to a lot of residents that have home occupations because they do want to, store some of their stuff in detached sheds. And anyway, this addresses that. This ordinance also provides allowances for detached garages, and I limited it to detached garages in a side yard if the garage meets the same setbacks as the house. And so that seemed to be pretty fair, because if it's detached from a fire code standpoint, and this goes from the building department, they have to be a minimum of 6 feet from the house. And they have to, and how this code is written then is they would then have to meet the same side yard setbacks, the same front setbacks, and the same back setbacks. And then they are also limited to 25 feet height. So they have a lower height than what the house is, but the height is capped at 25 feet. So it would make it consistent with the accessory structure code in that regard. But it doesn't allow for widespread use of like sheds and that kind of stuff in side yards, just detached garages. So we felt like we would kind of tiptoe into it. I didn't want to create a situation where we were allowing people to put tough sheds and whatever they wanted in side yards facing the street. We still want to keep it kind of a clean look. The thinking in the last meeting was if it was limited to a detached garage, that most likely would be kind of held to a higher level than something that could be slapped down. So I can jump through the code, but that's basically what it does. Oh, the other thing it does is it clarifies that swimming pools need to meet the same setbacks as accessory structures. We've had a lot of questions about that. So it would, the same setbacks that an accessory structure follows a swimming pool would be basically classified as an accessory structure. It just makes it easy for our code. We do that anyway. And there you go. Let me see if I can find kind of the meat of this. Yeah, so right here, accessory buildings, we add in residential swimming pools. And then this is kind of long, but basically what this is telling you is that a residential detached garage can be within the side yard and needs to meet the same distance requirements as the house. And then we had to put some clarifying language in the accessory buildings code, but it does essentially just what I said. And then this is the section that allows for an accessory structure. Oh, sorry, jump back up. This is the home occupation chapter. And what this does is it eliminates the language that restricts accessory structures. And then it says, it basically says that you can store stuff and you can use it for the activity of a home occupation. But it clarifies it has to be a legal accessory structure. So it has to meet the setbacks. If it's more than 200 square feet, it has to have a building permit. If there's electrical, it has to have a building permit. Can't be built in an easement. But that is basically what it does. So that kind of cleans up that part. It clarifies the swimming pool issue that we dealt with, and I think that'll be helpful moving forward. And I'll stand ready for any questions.
All right. This also is a public hearing as well. And so I think it'd be good to hear from members of the public if there are any. So do I have a motion to move into a public hearing?
This is Tim. I so move.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Okay. Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff beats Shan again for the record.
No, it's like this silence, and then I feel it. This is how I work.
All right, so Tim with the motion, Jeff with the second, Anthony, aye, Shan,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and Bryce.
Aye.
All right, so we are now in a public hearing. We'll give a moment for any members of the public to raise their hand and speak on this. It looks like Ashley has her hand up again. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question or share your comment.
This time it is Bryson.
I tried to be proactive and guess right, and I got it wrong.
I just had a question about how this affects rear yard structures going forward. I'm not really clear on the what is allowed for like a detached garage in your backyard. Down in the shores, they seem to be quite extensive and quite tall and large. Does this apply to those? I noticed there was specific language for side yard detached garages. Does this mean the city is differentiating between the two?
Yeah, so what this is doing is that it's opening the code up more. So right now, detached garages are allowed, but they cannot be located in the side yard, except for a very limited case on a corner lot side yard, but they're limited to 10 feet behind a fence. And so that's more of like a tough shed. But yeah, they could be in the rear yard only right now, 6 feet behind the house, and a minimum of 3 feet from the rear and side property lines. However, for every 1 foot you go above 15 feet in height, it requires an additional 1 foot of setback on the rear and the side. So you can go up to 25 feet, that's the cap. Okay. So at 25 feet, it's basically a 13-foot setback on both those sides.
And what did
yeah, go ahead.
What did you say? Like the rear yard setback is? Did you say it's only 3 feet for a garage?
Yeah, for an accessory structure. Yeah, but that's at a height of 15 feet in height. Okay. If it's a high, it can go up to 25 feet, but for every 1 foot above 15 feet has to set back an additional 1 foot. So a 16-foot height would be a 4-foot setback. Up to a 25-foot height, I think would be a 13-foot setback.
Okay, cool. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
And then Bryson, I saw that you messaged me, but I think it would be for the benefit of the public as well. You asked about when the city council meeting is scheduled. So they will meet next week, and anything that we recommend to them today, they could take up next week. They do set their own agenda as well, so they could choose to push it off at a later date, but I believe it's already been noticed for a public hearing for the 11th, a week from today.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other members of the public before we close our public hearing? I'm looking and I don't see any. Morgan, do you see?
I don't.
Okay. Could I get a motion then to move out of a public hearing?
I make a motion to move out of the public hearing.
All right. Thanks, Bryce. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
There we go. Shan. All right. Anthony's aye. Shan.
Aye.
Bryce.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
All right. We are now out of the public hearing. So based on what we've heard from the public and from staff, what additional questions, if any, do you have before making a recommendation here?
This is Tim. I was wondering, Morgan, if there's any distinction on the residential swimming pools relative to above ground or in ground. Is any distinction in that?
No, they just both be considered an accessory structure, so the same setbacks that apply. We use that anyway, but you could make an argument because it's subterranean that it doesn't need to follow the structure requirements. The problem with that is that it leaves it way open, so we wanted to ensure that it still followed the same guidelines as the accessory structure. So above ground would be classified as a structure because it's above ground, but this would apply to that and also to the below ground.
Thank you.
Morgan, can you clarify what requires a building permit? Anything from Walmart plastic shed or above ground swimming pool all the way to actually building a swimming pool and a 25-foot permanent garage. Yeah.
So I've asked this question to George quite a bit. We've talked about this a lot. And in our code right now, under one of the accessory structure sections, it provides a 200 square foot threshold. So anything above that needs to have a building permit. Also, my understanding from George is that if you have electrical, if you put plumbing, if you had, like anything like that, in an accessory structure, you'd have to get a building permit as well. I think a pool requires a building permit. I'm not sure if there's a threshold in like the square footage that it triggers, but a pool itself, I think, just requires a permit because there's obviously plumbing and some electrical, and there's mechanical equipment associated with it.
Great, that helps. So just to clarify, under 200 square feet, like a small little shed kit that a lot of folks have to store a lawnmower or something like that wouldn't need a building permit.
No, but they would need to still meet the same accessory structure setbacks. It'd be the same as building a fence. You don't need a permit, but you still have to meet the fence requirements.
All of those. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's just helpful, for the minutes and if anyone's listening.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I'm excited about it. I'll make an approval.
Excited enough to make a motion?
I know. I was going to say, Bryce, I think that this is yours, buddy.
I would like to make the motion. Yeah. Unless there's anything else that anybody know.
Go for it.
I move to recommend approval of the proposed zoning ordinance 2020-16.
All right. Thanks, Bryce, with the motion. Do I have a second for this?
I will second.
Jeff with a second, and we'll do a roll call. Anthony, aye. Tim?
Aye.
Shan?
Aye.
Bryce?
Aye.
And Jeff?
Aye.
All right, so the recommendation will move forward and go to the city council. So any members of the public that are interested in the outcome of that, we'd encourage you to come to the future city council meetings there. All right. Thanks everybody for that on the public hearings. We will now move on to commission member reports, and then after which we'll adjourn. So we'll just go down the line here and see if there's anything to report in any of your other capacities, including Heritage Commission or anything else. So Jeff, we'll start with you. Anything to report?
No.
Okay. Bryce?
Nope.
Shan, anything from you?
Nope, I'm good.
Tim?
Well, and Morgan might want to weigh in on this, but we've been moving forward, I as in the Heritage Commission, with selecting some illustrations that can be put into the Front Runner Station platform glasses. And this has been going on for several months since this early summer. And it's moving forward. We're trying to select images that would capture Vineyard's past. And we've kind of categorized them into agriculture, farming being one, Geneva Steel being another, a third being the lake and the different activities relative to the lake, and the fourth is native peoples. So we're moving forward. We've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of images and are trying to get it down into a workable few that could then be put into these glass panels. So maybe Morgan would want to add to that.
Sure. And it's kind of interesting. Brian actually has been kind of managing the project with Tim. And so feel free to jump in, Brian, if you'd like to share about it. But it's kind of a cool project. They've gone through a gazillion of these images, and I think you guys have it narrowed down to 4 per category. So we met with our designer today, and what the designer is going to do is she's going to take the images and create basically a graphic that can be stamped between the 2 pieces of glass for the panels. And they have some really cool concepts of things they can do with the images. The images will be transparent, so you can still see through the glass. But the architect is working with an artist at their studio who has some really cool ideas of how to make the images kind of blend together. And so there'll be a nice transition that can tell the story. We thought about doing text to kind of help tell it, but they believe that, the photos might provide a more powerful kind of message to people. And they also kind of indicated that most people, when they're waiting for a train, they don't want to read, or they might want to read their own book, but they're not wanting to read history. But they will spend time looking at the photographs, and anyway, I think it'll be a pretty interesting station.
Yeah, I love that idea. And Tim, I think that's an excellent place to kind of show off our heritage and our history. One other thought that just came to mind is I don't know what the view is necessarily of Timpanogos from there. I imagine it's pretty good, but I've been surprised in talking with my kids. I remember in school growing up around here, they'd always talk about the legend of Timpanogos and how you can see her hair and face and knees in the mountain and all of that. But they hadn't really been taught that much. And if it's a good view, I wonder if you could even have, something that kind of shows or explains that story or something, if you can look out that way, and that could meet the native people's portion as well. If you're looking out that way.
What we're going to have too is 2 areas on the platform that will have footings underneath them, so we can do an actual art exhibit, and we're looking for different ideas of things that could be based off of it. And so that might be a really great thing to actually do as like a sculpture or some sort of an art exhibit right on the platform. But thanks for that idea. That's really great.
Yeah, good stuff.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Amber, I know that you weren't a voting member tonight, but I know you've also been busy, and you shared some exciting news with me this last week about an article you had published. So I'd love to let you share some of that, and even if you have ideas on how the city can help, share some of those write-ups as well.
Yeah, my article was published in the Newtonian Plant Society newsletter, just talking a little bit about what we've done so far with our native plants and moving in that ecologically sound direction and sort of what we need to do in the future. It's not very in-depth, but it covers a lot, I hope. So I'd love for anybody to read it. Morgan, I guess I could just send it out through email if anybody wants to read it, but
we'll do a post.
Much it. We gathered some seeds that talked about that. We went to the Caraway and gathered some native seeds, some of which I'm attempting to grow in my backyard. We'll see how that goes. But it's just sort of the beginning, I hope, of our long-term environmental plan.
Great. Yeah, and thanks for being so proactive. And for all the commissioners, anything that is a passion area of yours, if you've got ideas, reach out to me and to staff. We're always looking for ways to get involved and to not just you, but also your neighbors and the community. So thanks, Amber and Tim, for those reports.
And Anthony, I have one thing.
I was going to go to staff here real quick. Go ahead, Morgan, and then if Chris and Don have anything, feel free to jump in after Morgan.
Sure. So our next meeting, if it's okay, we would like to cancel it. We do have a tour that's been offered to us of the Camus site, which I think would be really a great opportunity for you as commissioners to go out there. And that's kind of the central piece of everything that's happening up there. If we can get, the Camus completed, that's what cleans up that entire site. And hopefully we could do some potential uses on the Camus once it's constructed. And that'll be on the 18th at 4 p.m. If you'd like to go, please send me an email and we will reserve a spot for you. And then I believe the council has kind of some special activities that they're doing afterwards. So they may be doing a special meeting. So Jake's asked if you're willing to hold off on doing a meeting that night. We don't have any applicants right now for like site plans or anything, so we're good on that front. But if you're good with that, you can just give me a thumbs up or whatever, and we can, cool.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good opportunity for us to be a part of that if we can. For any members of the public that are listening in right now, would that be open to anybody, or is that just for Planning Commission and City Council?
Right now, it's just for Planning Commission. I will have Jake clarify, because I don't know from an open meetings law standpoint, because if you have a quorum there, then there should be allowance to have the public. I'm not sure how that works, but he is meeting with the attorney on it, and so if it's a standard like joint meeting with the City Council, then I'm sure that they would have to provide some way of doing it. I know that they're kind of worried about getting too many people up there because it's still an active site, but I can find out for you. Amber was asking what a Camus is, and so that's I'm going to screw up the name, but it's a Certified Area Management or Materials Unit. Chris, am I right or wrong? Help me out here, buddy.
I think it's like a contaminant area management unit or something like that. Yeah,
it's basically it's like a celled, like how a landfill was built. It's a celled, lined, capped containment unit where we put the contaminated soil from the Geneva steel site.
All right. So yeah, it sounds like we're open to canceling that. Obviously, if something urgent comes through with an applicant, we can change course there. But for right now, we can plan on that.
Great, thanks.
And then certainly from a commissioner standpoint, if you're not comfortable going somewhere in person, which is why we're doing an electronic meeting here, there would be no obligation or expectation that you would go to this, only if you're comfortable and it's something that meets your schedule. Okay, Don, Chris, any updates from you?
This is Chris. I can kind of give a quick update on the overpass. That's moving forward. We're trying to work asphalt in. The weather's turning on us, but we still think we can meet our December 10th deadline. on that. But they're getting the concrete curbing and stuff done on the east side right now. And so we're getting to really close to looking like a finished product there. So the Hawk project, putting the pedestrian signalized crossing on across Main Street on 4th North is we've awarded a contractor. I think that the materials are ready from UDOT here shortly, that we can go and have them pick those up and get them powder coated. So we may see some activity out there in the near future here, getting that Hawk signal constructed.
Great, good updates. Thanks for that. Don, anything from you? If not, that's fine.
No, I don't have anything. Thanks.
Okay. Any questions for staff from the commission? All right, could I get a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Jeff with the motion to adjourn.
And
Do I have
I'll
a second?
it.
Tim with a second. Anthony, aye. Tim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Bryce?
Aye.
And Shan?
Aye.
All right, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.